Okay, we're gonna call this meeting to order. This is the Rules Standing Committee meeting for the first time Thursday, November 7th, 4:30. And do we have any in-person or online public comment?
Well, I'll call the roll first, if that's okay, to make
Yes.
sure we have a quorum. Committee Chair Benitez,
Here.
Commissioner Byer? No? Commissioner Case? Here. Commissioner Walton? No? Commissioner Dockstader?
Here.
Commissioner Roca Vasquez, sorry. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comments, non-agenda public comment?
There is not.
Thank you. Okay, so new business. I hope you all have had a little bit of time to just take a quick look at the bylaws. I'd like to start there. This committee, well, first, the bylaws were created by a subcommittee of the CPP so that we could kind of get things going. This is about a year ago. I was on that committee, Doug Case was on that committee, Alec Byer was on that committee, and a couple of other commissioners. And Doug, actually, could you address how, because we worked from a draft that was presented to us, and could you give us a little bit of history about how we got there?
Yeah, well, the draft was the bylaws that the interim CPP used. And so when the CPP came into existence, we took the CRB bylaws and made modifications. We took out the section on elections because we weren't going to be having elections. Actually, we didn't think it would take as long as it did.
Hang on one second, I just want to make sure you're recording.
We are recording.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and so we took out elections because we thought that it would be a shorter process between the establishment and the adoption of the implementation ordinance and the appointment of permanent commissioners. And so we decided that the officers who were elected would serve until the new commissioners were elected. So we took out the elections process, but anyway, so we developed bylaws that were modeled after, but that weren't exactly the same as the CRBs. And then that's what the temporary, the ad hoc committee that we have with bylaws used as its starting point to develop these.
So if it was a modification of the CRB's bylaws in the process of taking, was it just part and parcel, created a draft from that, taking out the parts that the interim CPP thought were irrelevant, or was there any opportunity to look at other bylaws from other commissions? Because we didn't do that. And that's something I'd like for us to consider, whether it would be worth our while. Because we started with a draft, we didn't look at other similar commissions and their bylaws to see if there might be procedures that would be helpful for us.
We didn't do that, no.
Yeah, okay. That might not be a decision for us to make today, just because we are missing two people, and I do want to get everybody's, voices on that. But when I was, my concern in us, there are certainly tweaks and corrections and cleanup and things to make sure that, and I'm not saying that these are not functioning bylaws, but it may be helpful for us to consider how other similar commissions approach their bylaws. And I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole. I don't want to create too much unnecessary work. But I also don't like operating in a vacuum, right? So anyway, there's that. I'm wondering, Doug, do you have any thoughts about that?
Not really. I think it may be a good idea to see if there's anything that's missing. I mean, these were, but there actually was a long process of developing the CRB bylaws. And I won't get into that, but it's modeled after what's recommended by Robert Rules of Order in terms of what the bylaws are and so forth. Initially, the CRB's bylaws were just an unwittingly document, and so we put it into a cohesive document. I think everything here is important to have, but there may be some things that we don't have that other commissions have that we may want to consider.
Mhm. And I don't know if this would be other commissions that are operating within San Diego, right? Because we're all sort of similar, or if it would be other commissions that are doing what we do. But functionally, the bylaws don't really address what we're doing. They just address our structure and how we operate within, within that. So, right.
And there are lots of other procedures too that are listed there. So you have the standing rules and the other, we have all kinds of procedures. But
Yes, there are a lot
but
of,
the bylaws are intended basically to cover how is the organization structured, how are they elected, how do they have their meetings and so forth. And so pretty standard things that you have in bylaws. But we have a lot of other procedures that other boards and commissions don't have.
sure. Okay. The people who are new to this process, because at least we were involved in the formation that did, in reading this, was there anything that stood out or any particular questions or thoughts that you all had from in your review, aside from things that we'll just sort of pick up as we go sort of piece by piece? Was there anything that really stood out to you as creating a question in your mind, et cetera?
I don't have any major things that we can just do it.
Okay, well, one of the things about this is that our current bylaws reference a whole lot of other things at the outset, including on page 2 in Article 1, after all of the outside references, there's the CPP special rules of order, operational standing rules, and administrative standing rules. And so since these rules are incorporated into the bylaws but have not yet been created, there's a bit of a disconnect because we're referencing documents that the commission operates under that are listed in the bylaws that have yet to be created. And I don't recall us discussing that when we created these bylaws about why we were doing that. And again,
Well, I think it's primarily because it shows, the intent here is to show the hierarchical order. And so we list all the things that we had and things that we anticipated having so that the order would be would be correct.
Okay. And so is it our intention for the rules committee, which of course is referenced in here under committees, and that might be a good place for us to start on page 12 in Article 6, committees, on page 12 near the bottom, subsection E. The rules committee shall evaluate recommendations from commissioners for amendments to these bylaws, to special rules of order, to standing rules, and to other operational procedures. Rules committee is responsible to ensure, I actually have some changes to this, about how we address proposed amendments. And I did ask, when this committee was formed, I asked at a regular open meeting for any feedback from any commissioners for any amendments and did not receive any. So we are all commissioners, and so we have the ability to, consider amendments. One thing came in today from the chair, which was a request about making public comments. Right now, it's restricted to her or a designee that is a commissioner. And we'd like to expand that to include the executive director, which makes a lot of sense. But that is the only sort of outside request so far that we've received. Am I right?
I have received nothing else.
Okay. And so the rules committee here references special rules of order and standing rules. I keep finding myself going back and forth between what's listed in the purview of the committee as the committee's described, and thinking about operational standing rules and administrative standing rules. And I wonder if we should be specific or if that's even necessary. Are you following me?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I didn't see these defined.
Mhm.
They're defined in
Are
the,
The operational training rules.
on page 14.
Was it? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I missed that.
Right, they are, and there's a list of ways that those things can be amended. But of course, they have yet to be formed,
Okay.
right?
We have one.
Which one?
If I'm,
Yes, please.
per the interim operating procedures, we have one carryover at this point from the CRB. And that is, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, what the title is, I think it was a standing rule for auditing of case reviews. That is the only one that carried over from the CRB, according to the interim standard operating procedures approved by the council in October of 2022.
Oh, did it reference?
It
that?
only referenced that one, yes.
Okay,
Audit,
well,
audit.
and that's interesting, because we just decided we're not gonna do that anymore, but,
Correct.
and I'm sure everybody knows what he's referring to, especially these two, because they weren't.
No,
there was
please.
rea- And so there's two types of, categories of complaints. There's category 1 and category 2. Category 1 are, which are the more serious, are investigated by internal affairs. And when the CRB was set up many, many years ago in 1980 something,
88 or something like that.
they initially made a decision, probably a practical decision, that they would only do the category 1, probably because of the volume of stuff that they had. And then category 2 violations, or no, category 2 complaints are more minor ones, and those are investigated at the division level as opposed at the command, as opposed to IA. And when I joined the CRB, I asked the question, why aren't we doing all these, category 2? Because the charter for the CRB said that we were to review all complaints, and I said, we're not doing all complaints.
Mhm.
And there was some pushback how much additional time that would take, because it was about a doubling of the caseload.
Mhm.
And so we came up with a process that was called an audit, which was intended to be not as deep of a dive in each case. And we had a checklist to make sure that the investigation was thorough, that the allegations or the findings naturally reasonably flowed from the evidence that was presented. There were 6 things that were on the checklist. If there was a sustained finding, whether or not the discipline was appropriate. And anyway, so there was a checklist.
Mhm.
And the intent was we wouldn't necessarily need to listen to all of the interviews and body worn camera and do a deeper dive, and our report would be a page or 2 as opposed to what was many, many pages in the CRB.
Sure.
And so what we're doing now is actually much shorter than what the CRB did. I think as we got into it, people wanted to do more of a deeper dive, and so sometimes it was
Mhm.
becoming more of a review as opposed to an audit. And people were asking me what is the difference, and the category 2, we were looking at closed cases, because category 1, the policy of the department, which by the way is not specified in the ordinance anywhere, but it's included in our operating procedures, is that the category, well, is the cases are not closed until the CPP has had a chance to review them. Under the under the audit function, those were closed cases, and that's why we looked at discipline when we looked at it, because it was a closed case. And then several months ago, the commission decided that they wanted to do a review of all complaints.
Mhm.
And so, we probably don't need to have an audit procedure, because we're not
Mhm.
doing audits anymore.
Mhm.
And as an aside, an interesting thing is that the new internal affairs captain wants IA to do all the investigations and for them to
Even
eliminate
category 2.
category 1 and category 2, which I think makes a lot of sense.
There's just more independence.
Right, and so that's why public was the only one that was referenced in the was the only operating procedure we have right now is the operating procedure for case review.
Mhm.
And it was a condensed version of the procedure that we had for the CRB with changes for officer-involved shootings. It made statements that once, well, again, it was anticipated that we would have the operating procedures approved much quicker, but we talked about that we would, anyway, there were some minor changes for how we did officer-involved shootings, anticipating that we would be, have the ability to look at independent investigations by the CPP as opposed to just that. And I forget what my train of thought was, as I was.
Oh, well, we were talking about the procedures that we do or do not
Oh, yeah,
have.
and so that's, and so the only thing that's included there is case review and reviewing and discipline.
Hmm.
So both of those things are included there, and there was a reference to auditing because the intent at the time was we would continue to.
But we're not auditing.
Yeah, and so, but that's the only rules that we have, other than the bylaws right now,
Mhm.
are that administrative standing rule, which you can find on our website. And that also, by the way, went through a meeting confer. It was a fairly short meeting confer, and they allowed commissioners to attend.
The interim standard, the interim SOP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think Brandon, I and Charmaine attended
Mhm.
the session, and it was maybe only an hour or two long, but it was primarily codifying what the CRB did.
Mhm.
And the POA was, content with the way the CRB did their reviews. They had quite a few questions. They were asking questions about things that we've been doing for years, which they didn't really know about. And we explained, well, we've kind of always done it that way.
Mhm.
They said, oh, we didn't know that there wasn't any. It was a fairly amicable meeting confer process, and
And I'm sure it will be moving forward.
yes, absolutely. I think it probably will take maybe 3 or 4 hours this time.
Ever hopeful. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do, unless there's any objections, to just kind of go through the bylaws section by section. If Doug, I don't know if you have notes for things that you've kind of picked up along the way. If anyone does, as we go through the various subsections, just say something. This is a small informal group. So I want to start with in section 2, subsection, Article 2, subsection 2, under duties. The first line of Part A says to establish operating procedures for its governance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then in C, it says prepare operating procedures for the commission. I'm reading from Article 2, Section 2,
Oh.
Section 2, duties.
So we're not gonna start at the beginning?
We can start at the beginning. We can start at the beginning. Does anyone have any comments on Article 1?
Yes.
Great. Okay, go.
Well, on the list of the procedures there, it occurred to me that the policy that the city council adopted in refresh my memory, Paul, of what it is, but the one that talks about the conduct of,
The conflicts policy.
not the conflicts, but the,
Boards and commissions.
yeah, the code of conduct.
Code of conduct, exactly.
And that applies to us,
Hmm.
you know, and it's some specific, and in some cases, certain sections don't apply to us, but it specifies that in the document.
Yeah.
And so it is a document that applies to the CRB. And it should go on the list, and it should go, let me see,
Below the municipal code?
below the municipal code, because that is something that is the, well, let me see, city council policies. Probably after city council policies.
Mhm.
And then maybe that is a city council policy.
It is.
But even if it is a city council policy, maybe we should put city council policies including, and what is the official name?
The board and commission's conflict, code of conduct, code of conduct.
Okay. So-
And I will confirm that that is the official, but I believe
Thank
that's
you.
what it is.
And I think that, and we, well, maybe we don't need to. Anyway, I'd like to suggest that we say city council policies, including the boards and commissions, code of conduct. And I think it's significant enough that we ought to attach it to the,
Yeah, I agree.
to these bylaws.
Mhm.
We have the conflict of interest, and we have the code of ethics from NACO, and I think it's kind of along those lines, and so maybe put attached there in parentheses.
Mhm.
And then what, I see that it says attached here too is exhibit
Yeah.
one for the NACO.
Yeah.
And so, and I see we also have is the conflict of interest policy,
The conflict of interest policy is going to be, that's going to remain, but there's also some more detail that's going to be provided that we had to break down that interim executive director Scarborough worked on prior to her departure. It's going to go before the council, but it really is just, it's about Form 700 filings, what positions within the commission to include commissioners and whatnot. That's actually going up before the council next week.
Mm.
So that's a document that if you, that's
Mhm.
something that was worked on by my predecessor.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to add that as well to this.
yeah, so I would say that in this, the NACO code of ethics, but we also have attached, I assume these are attached on the website as well.
Yeah.
The conflict of interest policy, so maybe we should reference
Mhm.
exhibit 2 would be the conflict of interest policy, and then exhibit C could be the city's code of conduct.
I have a tendency to want to reorder them so that they're in accordance. with
Okay,
the-
then
with the
that's fine.
order.
Maybe put them A, B, and C, because the first one, then maybe the first one then becomes A. 'cause
So the
first-
board, yeah, the boards and commissions code of conduct would be A, NACO would be B, and then conflicts of interest would be C. And then you're saying there's gonna be another one once it's approved by city council?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know, I mean, it just lays out who has to file Form 700, so I think that should be on here as well.
But isn't that part of the conflict of interest?
Yeah, I'm wondering what the difference is. I don't know
It
if
is,
you-
it is laid out by position. And it says who is going to file and who is not, what the expectation is going to be.
I see.
So, and I can, obviously, I'll present that to the commission,
Mhm.
after it's approved by the council, we'll figure out where to put it at that point. But I think it's something to note that we need to add.
Okay,
Okay. So we'll put a bookmark there and wait until it's brought before the commission. Is that correct? And once the city council, yeah, okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so NACO becomes B, our conflicts, policy becomes C, that will, in theory, become D, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? Now can we go to Article 2?
Yes.
Something that I kind of wanted to pose as a question, everything that's on, particularly on pages 2, 3, 4, this language should mirror the ordinance, right? I think we went through that process as these bylaws were being developed, maybe not word for word, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't have bylaws that, you know, the ordinance says 5 working days and our bylaws say 7 working days, or, you know, things like that. So I do believe that we've already gone kind of through that process. And this may be a little excessive, but for me, when I'm looking at something in here and it's referencing something in the ordinance and I have no idea where that is in the ordinance and there's no reference in here, I want the reference in here, right? And so if we're going to be, if we're including things in our bylaws for the purpose of making sure that they match specific items that are in the ordinance, as a reader and a user, it's really helpful for me to be able to say, you know, Article 2, Section 2J, and then at the end, it's a citation, you know, essentially at the end of each one.
Well, and actually looking at this, it says per the city charter, and probably should say the city charter and municipal code, because I think some of these things actually are in municipal code and not the charter.
Mhm. Where's that language from?
Do what? Well, it says section 2 duties, it says per the city charter,
Uh-huh.
so I would say per the city charter and municipal code. Because some of these were put in the implementation ordinance that aren't, and the charter itself is fairly short,
Mhm,
implementation ordinance is fairly long.
mhm.
So were you volunteering to go through and?
No, I'm not. I would like the staff to do it. But if that's a bandwidth issue, then I would want to get volunteers from the committee.
To be clear, I would love staff to do it, and I think that staff should be the ones that are assisting
Yep.
every standing committee and ad hoc committee to do these things. At this point, we're taking the minutes, we're not
Yep.
taking, we're recording
Yep.
for Alina, but I will probably be more actively involved in this
Mhm.
standing committee than others. So
Okay.
I can definitely do what needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay.
However that happens, that'd
Yes.
be great.
That's fine.
And yeah, and so what I'm envisioning is at the end of every subsection, there's just parentheses.
Got it. I understand.
Yep.
Yep. Understand.
I hope that y'all don't think that's excessive. I just,
No, I think it's
I
a
think
good
it's
idea.
gonna be
Yeah.
easier later,
I agree.
right? So that
Absolutely
we're
agree.
not having to be constantly comparing documents.
Yep.
And so getting back to my first point about the references in Article 2, Section 2, so we're on page 2. A and C, the first line of A and C refers to establishing operating procedures and then prepare operating procedures. And I'm unclear why it's in there twice, whether we're referring to the same operating procedures and why it's written that way.
So where are you now?
I'm on page 2.
Okay,
Article 2, Section 2, the first line of A and the first line of C. So the first line of A says to establish operating procedures for its governance, et cetera, et cetera. And then the first line of C says prepare operating procedures for commission investigators. And so my concern is we're using the same term, and I don't know if it's referencing 2 different things.
it is 2 different things. You know, the operating procedures are the things that are going through,
Meet
well,
over.
see, it's, let me see. Anyways, the operating procedures are basically the things that are going through meeting confer.
Right, but are we talking about the same thing in
no,
A
but
and C?
C
Because we're
is
using the
kind of
same
a,
language.
Well, maybe we ought to have a different terminology other than operating procedures.
Paul, did you have thoughts here?
I also think that M on the next page is the same thing,
Uh-huh.
where it says established operating procedures. So you're right back there. I actually agree with what you're saying. I think it's all encompassing. I mean, these operating procedures, as per Doug was saying, it's so that we can do our thing. So that should all, I think, quite frankly, all be combined into,
Mhm.
they're all saying that, but they're probably going by, and that's why I was just gonna pull up the
Right,
code
it's
itself.
going by
They're
the
probably
code.
going by the code.
Yeah, there were specific things that were mentioned throughout the code.
Because M is all about communication, community outreach.
Mhm.
C is all about the
Mhm.
access to scenes, and
Mhm.
A is all
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
everything else, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and in reading this, I wasn't clear if we're talking about the same operating procedures. And these are just subsections of those operating procedures, or if we were using the same word, but for two completely different things, which is problematic. So you're saying it is the
You'll see, well,
former.
and not all operating procedures, according to our council, have to go through meet and confer.
Mhm.
And so, for example, in M, it talks about operating procedures for the preparation of our annual report. So all the things that are included there in M are things that would be
Mhm. Internal.
internal, and whereas C, for example, would be something that would be part of the meeting first. So, but I think that they were listed separately there because we went through, we were part of that process and
Yeah.
went through the implementation ordinance and found all of the duties and figured out where they belonged. And so it was mentioned separately in the implementation ordinance, and that's why it was mentioned separately here.
I think that's I wasn't part of that, but I
Yep.
think that's exactly what happened. And just to be clear, I think you folks already know, because I think we beat this to death last night and previous meetings, but the meet and confer process, the operating procedures that impact the working conditions of others, right? So we're not talking about the commissioners. That's the difference, just make sure, because it was maybe a little unclear last night. All right, sorry, thank you.
Okay, so it makes sense to still have it be repetitive?
Yeah, because there's different types of operating procedures.
Mhm.
So there's operating procedures for governance. And which actually include the bylaws, but
Mhm.
we bring,
Mm-hmm.
because the implementation ordinance says that we shall develop operating procedures for governance, but that basically is the bylaws. We didn't refer to them as the operating procedures for governance, but that's exactly what it is. But there's different types. There's a whole bunch of operating procedures that are mandated by the ordinance, and so and these are the ones, like M is actually several of them. Several are combined into M,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all separate operating procedures. Does that make sense?
You're gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, maybe it would make sense to put like a bold word before each of them, because the way the way I'm reading it right now, it does feel like, why are these being separate? And so if there was, for example, for C, like commission investigator procedures or something like that, and then just to signal to the reader when they're reading the bylaws what is going to be coming. I don't know if that would make sense. I don't even know if you can do that in bylaws, but maybe that would just help folks understand why they're different.
But are we gonna be able to do that everywhere? Right, that's the
Yeah.
thing, is it kind of might mess up the consistency.
Yeah.
But I understand your point. Which again leads us, I wonder though, if we include the reference, the citation, that helps at least, right?
Because it will be a different one on every.
On each one.
To your point, I just pulled them up and there's like subsection 1,
Right.
subsection 2 is what you're talking about now,
Yep.
I think that the reference will be most helpful in lead them.
Yeah, I just, as I was reading this, because I was not also looking at the implementation ordinance, I was only looking at this. That's why I asked the question, because it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
good.
and a good point is that there are several operating procedures that need to be developed. Like
10
all
of them that are right now.
and many of them are mentioned in M are things that the ordinance says that we should have an operating procedure for our website for,
Yeah, there's even more than 10. 10 are at meet and confer.
Oh, yeah, there-
There are many more for internal and how we
right,
do it.
and those are actually mandated by law.
Mhm.
And
And we don't
those,
have them.
we don't have them,
Yet.
but those are, that's what the rules committee should do.
Mhm.
And so after we get done with revising the bylaws
Mhm.
and,
Yeah, I don't think after we get done, I think it's just gonna be a simultaneous process.
yeah.
Yeah.
But some of these may take a while to do,
Sure.
but, Gonzalez volunteered to draft all of them.
Oh, we did? That's
Oh,
cool.
I just heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this committee, I mean, over time, will have plenty of work to do because we are, what, a year and what, 1, 2, 3, 4 months in, and we're still ramping up in many respects. I mean, the staff is ramping up, the meet and confer has yet to begin. So it feels a little weird to be at this point in the process and still feel like we're not even toddlers. You know what I mean? Like developmentally in terms of fulfilling our duties and our obligations. So on the agenda for our next meeting, we're going to have a number of different items and you'll be leading that discussion.
Yes.
So in section 2, aside from references and which let's revisit once we have that sort of in there as in a draft form and see how we feel about these operating procedure, the language, and if it provides a little bit more clarity for us.
Maybe we can come up with a list of procedures that this committee needs to draft for the commission.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of them.
Yes.
We probably should do them sooner rather than later because they are mandated by the ordinance.
I'm sorry, sir, what was, that was a list of all the operating procedures?
Yeah, the operating procedures, except for the ones that are part of the meeting confer packet. And so there may be 10 there, probably about 10
It's going-
here.
Mhm.
Like one I just mentioned, I mentioned previously about a process for making nominations for commissioners. That's one of the ones that's mentioned in the ordinance.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of others.
Mhm.
So maybe in addition to that one, we should make. But we probably can go through here and also looking at the ordinance, come up with a list of the ones that we need to work on.
And I'm willing to do that legwork for you if you'd like me to do it.
I love staff.
I'm willing to do it.
And, okay, thank you. Okay, so anything else on looking now at pages 2 and 3? Is anybody,
I had a few
Yeah.
questions. So, for section 2, C.
Yeah.
When it says, prepare operating procedures, et cetera, to have immediate access, is that something that will be defined in the meet and confer? Like
Yeah.
what immediate access means?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what we need to make sure. That's one of the areas that we fight.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. On E,
Mhm.
I had a question about, the last phrase, I guess, just in the last line, it says, or where no specific allegation or police officer can be identified. I don't know if someone could explain that to me, because I just couldn't be identified by whom? Like, who wouldn't,
a complainant?
a complainant?
Well, sometimes it is the department too, because oftentimes the complainant won't know who the person is.
Right.
But the department can look at the incident and see,
Okay.
these are the officers who were on that scene
Mhm.
and so forth. But if there is a general allegation that the officers handled the situation poorly, that's their complaint. You can't really do an investigation of whether they handled the situation poorly. You need to have a specific allegation.
Okay.
And, or if you said that the officers were rude and there were 20 officers there and you didn't know which ones that it was. Anyway, but this language comes directly from the ordinance. That's what it means is that
Mhm.
in order to do an investigation, you have to know who you're investigating and what you're investigating. investigating.
And to that point, so the police department has assured us that when we still forward those, we get those right now, since we're not doing anything independent, everything we get, we log. And then we forward over to the police department, and they've assured us that even when the person doesn't know whatever, they assure us that they have done everything they can. They do take it and look at all their systems and everything to see if they can identify.
Okay,
And then if they can't identify, then that's something that they are not going to, what is that, miscellaneous? They don't do anything with it, and they let us know. So,
okay, thank you.
Sort of like a lineup. I'm joking.
yeah, that's exactly right. But when we finally get our independent authority, 8, 9, 10 years from now, maybe a year or two from now, our staff will be doing everything we can to identify. I mean, we're not just gonna punt it over there. If once we get independent, we will independently investigate to determine if we can identify someone.
Okay.
Okay.
The last, actually, I just have two more in this section. So for F,
Mhm.
when it says including internal investigations not resulting from a complaint,
Mhm.
could you explain that?
Yes, that's a big one.
That's a
Mhm.
huge
And,
one.
and that's one that, you can thank that case for being in there, because I insisted that it be in the charter amendment.
But it's not happening though.
But
I don't think it's happened.
that has not happened because they maintain we can't do it concur. But,
So I'm sorry.
anyway, but, an internal complaint is a complaint that the department itself initiates. So say there is a supervisor or just an officer on the scene who sees an officer do something that is a violation of policy, they'll report that, and IA will investigate that. Under the CRB, it said you investigate complaints, so that's not a complaint, it's an internal investigation.
Okay.
And the CPP now has the authority to review complaints that don't come from a citizen or come from a resident.
Okay,
Um,
but it's internal.
It's internal, and it's about 40% of all the complaints that they investigate.
Okay,
And the majority of those would be sustained. The majority of those, I mean, what my experience has been in civilian oversight and in law enforcement is the ones that are internally generated, they know you, more often than not, they know you did something wrong. That's how come the sergeant is someone's reporting you. And so there are many of them, but we at this point
Mhm.
do not get those. They do not tell us what those are,
okay,
and there is some confusion somewhere, ambiguity in the code or whatever. Sometimes it says that's ours, sometimes not. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, I think it's
myself.
very clear in the code that we have the ability to do that.
At some point later on.
You-
it was
what
not.
is,
Yes.
so,
we can discuss it later, but what's confusing in the code is to what degree they are required to give us the status update of internal ones as opposed to.
Maybe that's one. Yes, I knew there was something that it didn't jive, but that's huge that we should have those.
so
Thank you, Doug, please.
this, I guess this will just be my last question. So on page 4, then under 8 on H, under section 3H, when it talks about a mediation program between complainants and a police officer,
Mhm.
would that then apply to internal complaints between police who have made internal complaints against one another?
No, because a mediation program, which a lot of departments have, we don't have it, and that's something that will happen down the road.
Okay.
We put in the ordinance because we thought it was a good idea,
Okay.
and so we wanted to make sure we had the authority to do it.
Okay.
But that would be a mediation between
A community member.
a community member and the police, which I happen to think is a really good idea.
I do too.
LAPD did it.
And because a lot of times when people make complaints, what they really want to do is have a discussion with the officer and tell them how they felt and so forth in the current process, and make a complaint, and they get this form letter back, which is not very satisfying. And so there's some really good mediation programs that exist in different parts of the country that provide an opportunity for residents and officers to get together and discuss something, and normally part of that process is there's not going to be any formal outcome. And so, both sides agree this is not going to result in discipline, this is going to result in
Conversation.
a conversation, and perhaps.
Yeah, it's for sure,
It's wonderful.
if it's set up well.
And I also think it saves money, because internal affairs investigations take a lot of
Resources.
resources. I mean, You know, look at the one we have, think of how much time went into that
Mhm.
and,
And
the cost of it.
it's not satisfying for the complainant because they're not
Right.
told anything other than sustain, not sustain, whatever, for the most part.
Anyway, but
But
that's,
go ahead.
That was all I have for section 2. Thank you.
Anything?
No, this time.
Okay. Doug?
No.
Okay. The only other thing I have is, I believe strongly in the Oxford or serial comma, and it's used intermittently in the document. This is good for the recording, on page 4, section 3, subsection G, after mayor, there should be a comma, I believe.
With-
Okay.
we can take a vote on that.
Huh? You know, it's one of these, there's
Chair's
certain
prerogative.
things, because I edit, one of my jobs is to edit, and I see things like 2 spaces after a period, fingernails on chalkboard, that die with the typewriter, and the absence of the Oxford comma. It's just like, that's where my eyes go. So, and then in terms of including citations, that goes all the way through section 3, section 4, section 5 of Article 2. And are we ready to move on to Article 3?
Yes.
Excellent. Let's see. Oh, here, I have an Oxford comma in subsection D after the word reasonable. Page 5 at the
Going
bottom.
back
Go on.
to section 1B,
Yes?
it says effective June 30th, 2024, and that is already passed.
Uh-huh.
So I think we should reword that.
Yes.
If you just take that out, say appointment to the CPC
Yes.
to a specific term, with a 2-year term with appointment up to 3 additional consecutive terms. Only half of the commissioners will be eligible for reappointment. I think we can just take out the effective June 30th
I agree.
and same.
Anything else on page 5 at the beginning of membership? My next note is in section 2. Anybody? Page 6, Doug? On page 6, if we're in section 2, subsection B, case review. It reads, the last 2 sentences, commissioners must sign a confidentiality agreement. Commissioners cannot take part in closed session meetings or review cases without signing the confidentiality agreement. There's something inherently wrong with that language, but I just feel like it doesn't flow very well. I wanted to suggest that we say commissioners must sign a confidentiality agreement to have access to or to participate in closed session meetings or review cases, like just, that's it.
Yeah.
I'll say that again for the recording. Commissioners must sign a confidentiality agreement in order to participate in closed session meetings or review cases. And then at the bottom of page 6, in subsection E, community outreach, the second paragraph reads, commissioners can speak in public about the role of the commission to provide education for the community. Only the commission chair is the spokesperson for the commission on issues that require public comment. Now, this is repetitive because it also is addressed in the definition of the role of the chair. So if we're going to leave it here so that it's in 2 places, which is fine, the language should be consistent. And so we could either say only the commission chair, or I noticed that we use the word their as opposed to his or her. Their designee, we could say that, but however we word it, it should be consistent there, and then also where we're defining the role of the chair. Anybody have any preferences on the way that we refer to that?
I'd say only the commission chair or their designee.
This is where you wanted to make Paul be able to also.
Right, and so this, I like their designee, except that if what we're wanting to define elsewhere is that it can only be the commission chair, a designated commissioner, or the executive director, do we want it to be,
This should be consistent. So
Right. Paul,
I don't even think it should be here, quite frankly.
you don't?
No, I
Because
think
it's
it's already
repetitive?
outlined down the road, or underneath, I mean, we're gonna change it underneath, powers and duties of the,
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, when we wrote this, we were saying, we added the commissioners can speak publicly about the role of the commission to provide education for the community. But there, we wanted to put some cautionary language.
understood.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
So
yeah, I think it makes sense for that reason for it to be there,
To
but
stay
it should
there.
be consistent.
Okay.
but for consistency, I think whatever we do under the definition of the chair, we do there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not only that, you will also add a little bit under the role of the executive director.
Yeah.
And the response may also be the spokesman. That needs to be added there.
Yes, yes. Okay, anybody else on page 6, moving on to page 7? So sections F and then section 3.
Sorry to ask, you, can we go back
Sure.
to page 5,
Yeah.
section 1? I guess, I'm wondering if, first off, is the part that says, when, yeah, I can do 2024, when the CBP will be a specific seat within a category for 2-year term,
Mhm.
with reappointment up to 3 additional consecutive 2-year terms. Does that mean that, for example, I'm no longer eligible for reappointment in my seat, does that count as part of those 3? I'm elected through a youth seat, so I'll be 25 by the time I'm up in the election, does that count towards that seat? Is that the election specific to the seat or to the commission as a whole? Could I jump to District 6
In other
and then
words,
just, and then at large over the next
right?
so and so years?
Is it specific to the seat or the individual, basically, is what you're asking? I don't.
That I don't know. You know?
Do you know?
It probably would,
a good
you have to be
question.
approved by the city council. I think you could do it, but you'd have to resign from your current seat and go to the other seat.
And then I also have a separate question that I don't think is addressed here. What about service beyond expired terms while we're waiting for vacancy to be filled for that?
Because that's happening right now.
That is addressed someplace. Commissioner Justice, for example, he's termed out already, but he's still serving until his appointment.
I'm not sure whether I mentioned, it does
It's
mention that in the
it's-
ordinance.
It's in the ordinance. I don't think it's here in the bylaws. But it is clearly in the ordinance, yes.
Which
Yeah, I
makes,
think
raises the
I
question,
remember
should it,
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking about what you're saying, and that is that if you age out of your seat, and then you are appointed to a different seat in a particular district or in a low-income district or whatever it is, does your maximum number of years of service follow you, or is it, right?
Is it within
Yeah,
or between the different categories?
Right. and I don't know. We have to-
I will follow up on that.
Okay.
I will follow up on that.
it probably would be good to include in our bylaws, the
Mhm.
statement that you continue in your seat until your replacement is confirmed by the city council.
Mhm.
Maybe have it go between B and C.
It could be a second paragraph to B, because that's kind of about terms of office.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah.
That would be a little project place to put it.
I don't know if that's actually in writing anywhere. Paul, could you find out if it is?
That is in writing. I think it's in the code.
Yes, in the code.
It is, but I'll just take
Yep.
that verbiage and stick it.
Yeah, in second paragraph of B.
of B. Yeah,
And I'm just gonna call this the James Justice Rule.
that's it.
Excellent.
However, members whose terms of service have expired must continue to serve until the successor is appointed, even if the total time served extends beyond the maximum permissible length, and that's must continue to serve.
I'm right, that,
It says must. I'm blown away by
That's
that.
weird.
Must continue to serve. And that's in the code 26.1104.
But you can resign.
Okay.
That's interesting. That, yeah, that's very surprising that it doesn't say that. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm on section 3, removal. Let's see, trying to read my own handwriting. Any commissioner that, we go back and forth between can and may. Sorry, I don't think it just really gets me. I think can should be mays. May
Yeah.
shall must.
I'm done with that.
Any commissioner may voluntarily resign by, in here, maybe we have to do this because it's the way it's written in the law, but it's very awkwardly written and sort of outdated and saying like letter or email. It should be just in writing. May voluntarily resign by submitting their resignation to the commission chair and the executive director in writing. And I wondered if that should be an and or an or between the chair and the ED.
Yeah.
And then in furtherance of that, the last sentence, then instead of saying letter, once the notice has been received, the position shall be considered vacant. Yeah. So any commissioner can voluntarily resign by submitting the notice of resignation or resignation.
Put notice of resignation. That's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. To the commission chair and executive director, a commission's written notice of resignation is required by the city clerk and becomes a matter of public record. Once the notice has been received, the position shall be considered vacant.
Okay.
Under removal for cause, I also had a couple of notes. First line, commissioner may also be removed for cause, including but not limited to the following reasons, which seems very odd. I wanted to suggest that we say that commissioner may also be removed for cause for any or all or any of the following reasons. It just seemed oddly.
wait, would you think they were doing that? Just like, there are additional reasons.
That's true.
Yeah, so what you suggested makes me think this is an
It's only-
exhaustive list.
Yeah. I wonder why we go out of our way to have such a long list. If
You're talking about,
be removal for cause.
that comes directly from the ordinance.
Okay,
I'm looking at that. One second. I thought so too.
And those are the only reasons you can do.
well, if that's
What-
true, then why does it say including but not limited to?
Well, what does it say in the
Right, I
ordinance?
think that we just need to,
You know, I'm looking. I must be completely missing it because I know it's here and I'm having a hard time finding the whole removal for cause. Removal of commissioners. Okay. The commission may recommend to the council that a member be removed for good cause other than a criminal conviction for the following reasons. And it lists 8: misuse of position for personal interest, misuse of records,
Mhm.
violation of federal, state law, conduct that impedes a member's ability to serve impartially, unexcused absences from at least 3 consecutive, failure to complete case reviews assigned by
Yeah.
the executive
Yeah,
director.
I was
Is that in
gonna,
here?
5 has 2 different things in it. I was gonna make part 1 of 5, unexcused absences for 3 consecutive meetings as 5, and then 6 would be the failure to
And that's
complete.
what it is.
So can you make sure, can we just do the cleanup so that it matches, because it
Take care of it.
doesn't?
Yeah, I got it on it. Oh, that's right, you guys have jobs. I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly. Hmm.
Oh, wow, this is all recorded, by the way. Whoops.
It's just one of those days.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
The next paragraph, the last paragraph, which runs on the page 8. The commissioners will have an opportunity to present a defense and answer questions. By a 2/3 vote, the commission may recommend to the city council, and this may be ordinance language.
It is.
Okay. I didn't understand why by a 2/3 vote was at the beginning as opposed to the end of that sentence. But if it has to be that way, then so be it. Does that make sense? It begins the sentence with by a 2/3 vote, as opposed to the commission may recommend to the city council that a member be removed.
And here's what it says in the code.
Yeah.
The commission, by a 2/3 vote of its members, may recommend to the council.
Awkward writing all of that.
Actually, I think grammatically, that's correct.
The ordinance,
No.
Ours?
The sentence, because it's not removed by a 2/3 vote, it's by 2/3 vote, the commission may recommend. It's grammatically correct the way that it's there, and that's the way it is in the ordinance.
but it's not the way it's.
No, it is.
The commission, comma, by a 2/3 vote of its members, comma, may, not Oxford, I understand, may recommend to the council that a member be removed for good cause. So it says the commission, by a 2/3 vote of its members, may recommend to the council, yada, yada, yada. That's what it says in the code.
You prefer this grammar over that grammar? I didn't like it, but that's fine.
Diagram the sentence and it makes sense.
What?
Diagram the sentence and it makes sense. You got the diagram sentences anywhere?
Yeah,
Of course I did.
yeah,
And I
thanks
don't-
for that.
I don't remember a
Yeah.
single thing.
Yeah, I just remember, I had not
You
thought
have
about
no
that.
idea what that is.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
Sure.
Oh, that's
We
awful.
have to-
Yes.
So much time in school diagramming.
Yes.
That's right.
The noun and the verb, anyway,
Yes, it's not good.
but if you do it, you have to sit structure, so you understand.
Why? Okay, and I think that is all I have for Article 3. Anybody else? And another Oxford comma, maybe we already got to this one, I don't think so, bottom of page 8. The
Yeah.
offices of chair, first
First
vice
vice
chair,
Got it.
and
Yeah, got it.
So Doug, what was this about elections? You said you guys took it out?
Oh, out of the interim CPP bylaws,
Oh, okay.
we took out elections because we weren't planning on having elections because it was only good for a short period of time.
Okay. Do you like the way that they are in here?
do you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys, were you guys on the commission when we did that? It was just a few months ago.
I wasn't.
Oh. When's the fiscal year end?
June 30.
Yeah, it was right when you were hired, I think.
I
Was
was-
it June or July?
I was, my first day was June 26th.
Uh-huh.
First meeting was in July, so it was after.
Yeah, yeah. It was like the meeting before you started. I think. Okay, so moving right along to powers and duties of the chair. So we've already addressed part of this. Subsection 5, to act as a spokesperson for the commission, to make official statements for the commission, or to delegate this responsibility to another commissioner or the executive director.
Is,
Yes.
is it delegating it to the executive director,
True.
or does the executive director have the authority to do that without being
That's a good question.
delegated? It seems to me that maybe the executive director should have the authority to be a spokesperson without the chair delegating that to them.
That's an interesting thought, and you would think that I would agree with that. I don't want to be like whomever the chair is. I want that to be something that the commission clearly delegates to the executive director, not just, that way there's no conflict. Like if the executive director goes off and says something, I like it with the commission, specifically the chair delegating that responsibility.
That's the
to-
language that Gloria sent.
And that's what I think that that's reasonable, as opposed to just having it be, oh, well, you can do it, no, let's make it clear that that's what that chair at that time wants. That's why I like that. As opposed to just
I would
saying,
want broader authority, but
Ah.
so be it.
I would love to have that broader authority, but I also don't want to go,
Yeah, I
I
understand.
think the
It's-
commission should delegate that to me, or to the executive director, but can take it back at any time.
Okay.
So it won't be codified, like, how is that gonna be under, it'll be in this section?
It'll be in this section, and then that same language will go in that other section.
Is that continuous or on a case by case basis?
I think until the delegation, and it's something I would coordinate, like, I would always coordinate with the chair, like, hey, so-and-so's reaching out. I'm gonna make this statement unless you have, is that, okay? I would always let them know that. Yeah, as we grow, I think that's the right thing to do.
Subsection 7, to appoint chairs and members for all, I believe it should be standing committees, because we have a conflict. There's ad hoc committees. The language is different under ad hoc committees.
Where is that?
I've gone back and forth with Lori about this. Under committees, under page 13 at the top, subsection 3. Each wait, where is it? No, that's not where it is. Where is it? There is language that says that ad hoc committees decide on their chair. I know that it says it. on the-
It does say that. It's on page 11.
Yeah,
It's
Oh,
under the third paragraph under section 1.
yep. Ad hoc committee chair shall be selected by a majority vote of the ad hoc committee members.
Page 11, section 1, basically third paragraph of section 1. Last
Two sentences.
sentence.
I think we should be consistent.
You think we should be inconsistent? I thought that what we should do is leave the ad hoc committee language in there and have the ad hoc committees elect their chair and limit the commission chair's authority to selecting the chairs of standing committees.
That makes sense.
I agree.
So
wait.
that we could do that by adding the word standing in front of for all standing committees. Also, I wanted to toss this out about whether that authority is checked by the commission, like with the approval of the commission
Of the chair to select the.
chairs. It's just a question. I have come up with that in other organizations where the chair can do all of these things, but he or she runs it by the body.
Yeah, oftentimes they ratified,
So that's not in here. And generally, I would think that it may not happen, but just as we discovered last night, right? The cabinet appeared to come in with an idea of who should be on this ad hoc committee. Okay, that's the way it appeared. I'm just saying, as an individual commissioner, it appeared as though this came from the cabinet. Maybe it didn't. 'cause it came-
It came from Dennis that it came from.
Got it. Anyway, my point is that after discussion, that proposal was essentially upended. I think part of it had to do with Ada wasn't there also, you know what I mean, because Ada was a chair of a standing committee. And there seemed to be some confusion about who the seventh person would be, because we don't have any more standing committees, right? So that whole discussion really kind of went to, okay, well, who actually wants to? And then it got narrowed down from there, which is healthy discussion. And so I don't know if that, anyway, I want to throw that out as an idea in that particular subsection.
I could see ratifying the chairs of committees, but members, I think you're gonna be ratifying all those. I mean, it usually looks like on a volunteer basis.
Yeah, well, then that's a second question. So it is, does the chair, commission chair, have the ability to appoint chairs and members for all standing committees? Or just the chairs? Or, you see what I mean? Like, and
Well, I think they should build to a point. The question is whether or not it requires confirmation by the
Mhm.
commission.
Sorry, just, when we originally made the standing committees, weren't each of the people from the ad hoc committees offered the opportunity, so they could have rejected the, I guess, nomination or appointment.
they could,
So just, because the problem last night was just that there were people who were uncertain and on the fence.
Correct.
At any time they could have rejected it. So I guess that problem won't happen with standing committees.
like, for example, with this standing committee, Gloria reached out to me and said, would you like to chair the rules committee? And I said, sure. And I don't remember how we got to the additional committee members, but I know at some point I said, I'd like to invite Dan Lawton. And-
That was like volunteering.
Huh?
We volunteered. They
To be on the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, it's hard to think about this without thinking about our current chair, but I'm just sort of thinking about this in a long-term kind of way. Do we want either chairs of standing committees and or like chairs and members of standing committees to be ratified by the body? As opposed to it being at the will of whoever the chair is.
Well, part of the problem is, or not a problem, part of the issue is that every commissioner is required to serve on at least one committee.
Mhm.
And so if you're trying to balance that out,
Mhm.
having the commission vote on that, I'm not sure makes a lot of sense. In other words, the way we did it at the meeting for this committee, were appointed as the chair and then having people volunteer to serve on it.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense if you're doing it on a volunteer basis, which is normally how it's done. Maybe you raise your hand or with sign sheet, you have to then have to volunteer, you have to be ratified. But I do think that it makes sense. Not sure it's essential, but I think there's some good rationale to having the chairs approved, ratified by the commission, because that gives a lot of power to the chair, because the executive committee makes a lot of decisions, and they're making on behalf of the commission, and so the commission, if you had a very divided, politically oriented commission, and the chair wanted to just have their allies serve as chairs. Anyway, I think it makes sense to have the chairs of the committees ratified or confirmed, or we want to elect by the.
Yeah, I mean, so we could break this into, I mean, according to what the bylaws say, just think about the rules committee, okay? The chair had the ability to appoint the chair of this committee and the members. That's not what we did, right? The chair, Gloria, appointed me, and then people volunteered, right?
Well, essentially they did. I mean, she asked for volunteers, and so.
Yeah.
But by volunteering, she was appointing it.
I get that. So anyway, so we could do this a couple of different ways. We could break them apart and say that the chair, meaning the commission chair, what's the language? To appoint chairs for all standing committees of the commission, period, and then a separate line item. With the approval or
Yes, yes, subject to the approval or
subject to the approval
approval
of
of
the commission.
of the commission, and then say, shall appoint members of all committees.
Yes. Or we leave the whole thing subject to the approval of the commission.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of the
I like
application
just
of this.
ratifying the chair, but I'm not stuck in a way.
Any other thoughts? I'm not attached to any of it. It's just,
Maybe we can put something in there about volunteering, because that just seems to me to be the crux. Because Gloria, I get it, she appointed people, but she solicited their input.
Yeah, but if you had, it can't just be about volunteering, because if you have, there's a limit to the number of people you can have on a committee, and so, plus you have to divide it up, because everybody has to be on one committee.
Right.
And so,
so if 12 people put their hands up and said they wanted to be on the rules committee because it is the most exciting committee, right?
yeah,
Then
then the chair would.
somebody
need
would
to-
have had to pick and choose because of, it, right? Okay.
So what would you like to, I'm sorry, so to appoint the chairs for all standing committees, subject to approval of the commission.
Yeah, I guess the question is, should it be the chairs and the members subject to approval, or is it the chair subject to approval and the members?
Sorry, I'm just because the way to get membership in the scenario that Doug mentioned, it is how we decide that. The chair determines which of 7 out of the 12 they would like to see on that committee. Would we have to propose each different permutation of that combination and vote on that, or would we do a vote, show of hands, each person, and then the top vote gets, and then on that committee?
Yeah, which is why I think probably makes more sense just to have the chairs
Just some shares.
ratified. And as a practical matter, what we did in the past, since everybody had to serve on a committee, was they passed around the sign-up sheet and you indicated which committee, your first choice and second choice and so forth, and the chair took all that and assimilated it, make sure they have an even distribution and gave
Yeah.
everybody their first choice would be good. And so it makes,
Yeah, because everyone's volunteers. That's what I do in my job with my board, is they're all volunteers, and I go to them first, and I ask them, what committees do you want to be on? And what committees do you want to chair or co-chair, right? And if I can, I want to do that, right? Because the last thing you want is to not be a rules kind of person and be on a rules committee, right? So,
I would maybe suggest that we keep the language that it is there, but add a sentence that says the chairs are subject to,
appointment of committee chair, of standing committee chairs, is subject to, approval of the commission.
Yeah, shall be ratified by the.
Okay, so to appoint chairs and members for all standing committees of the commission. And then a second sentence.
Like the chairs of standing committees. Shall be ratified. Is that the right word? By the commission.
Or subject to the approval of.
I like subject to the approval.
I don't care.
Okay. We have 9 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Uh, Does anybody else have anything on either subsections, the chair, first vice chair, second vice chair? One little note I have under second vice chair, item 1. The number 1 ST is in there, and it should be the word first because it's inconsistent. Under first vice chair, number 4, to oversee training of new members with the Training and Continuing Education Committee. This is one of these things where again, I'm bringing this from my real life, my unfortunate, the job I have to go to. Where we have certain officers, when you're secretary, you're the chair of this. When you are treasurer, you're the chair of this. And sometimes it doesn't fit and we bump up against that. And so it could be that at some point, the person who's the first vice chair is just not kind of a training and education kind of person. And so that just sort of caught my eye with respect to that. And I don't know that we need to designate that to a person. I actually thought about designating that duty to the executive committee. And then the executive committee can figure out how they're going to do that, right? To the orientation of new commissioners. So anyway, just a thought. Doug, you have any thoughts on that?
Actually, I would take it out because I think it creates a conflict between the chair of the Training and Continuing Education Committee.
I agree.
Okay.
And so I would just
Okay.
Because, you know, some of the training may be done by staff,
Sure.
you know, and so having, I mean, I don't think we need to designate,
Yeah. Great. And I'm just gonna get through Article 4 and then we can stop if that works. I value your time and then here too, on the top of page 10, which is the end of the second vice chair, subsection 5, do we want the second vice chair to be the parliamentarian? There's just a question.
does this act as to act or designate a parliamentarian?
Designate, never mind, leave it. And then the other thing that I think we need to clarify is under the cabinet, item 2. It says provide supervision of and consultation with the executive director. I believe that the word supervision should be replaced with oversight. It's a different relationship. The executive director is our hired subject matter expert, and we're the board, basically. Supervision it's a management, right? And oversight is that you have a cabinet that makes sure that the executive director is effectuating what that job is. And I think that characterization, that language is important. It's really important in my world, which is nonprofits, which is a very similar relationship between a board, which is a commission, and an executive director. So anyway, that's my recommendation, is that word be changed from supervision to oversight.
Or,
Do you want oversight or supervision?
Oversight.
well, technically,
Mhm.
they serve with the will and direction. So I guess the other one, we could use the word direct, which is different than
Yeah, but
supervise.
you don't direct your executive director, really, because you oversee them.
The commission is my boss. Commission
The commission
is
is,
my boss.
Correct.
And that's who,
yeah, I mean, like, okay, I'm an executive director. I serve at the will of the board. The board can fire me, right? He
Same.
serves at the will of
I
the
see, now
commission.
you're drawing distinction between the, oh, so the cabinet and the commission.
Yep.
Yeah, I think oversight is fine.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. So, we'll have some of our sort of tentative edits at our next, meeting. We'll make sure that between Paul and Doug on our next agenda, we add the things that we want to work into the future. For, agenda items for all the other,
So-
rule related
So
things.
just clarify,
Yes.
Paul's gonna come up with a list, or maybe he and I are gonna come up
Yes,
with a list
please.
of all the procedures we need to,
Correct.
I was gonna do that.
okay, then you can do it.
If it's all right.
That's fine.
The less work you folks have to do, the better. And if I.
I think I have a
fall
list
down,
already developed, because I developed a separating them between. I'll send you what I have,
Okay, perfect.
and you can use that as a starting point.
Sure, thank
And
you.
then I was going to develop the special rule of order regarding the chair. And well, actually, we don't need to do the,
Wait, say that again, special rule of order regarding the chair.
regarding the chair's ability to vote, make motions and so forth.
Oh, uh-huh,
And the nominating people to making recommendations to the city council for appointment.
Mhm.
That'll be on the list. I'm not sure it necessarily needs to be the first thing on the list.
Mhm,
And so
yeah.
maybe take that off. Like, we don't have to talk about that next time,
Okay.
but I would like to talk about the standing rule of order.
Mhm.
During the chair, I can draft that.
that'd be great.
It would only be like one paragraph.
Yeah.
When our next meeting is.
Yeah, let's talk
No,
about that.
yeah, let's, why don't we look at our calendars and figure that out?
So,
Yes,
for you folks, what I was trying to do, and if I know it may be inconvenient for all of you, I was trying to have all these standing committees, if possible, on a Thursday, like not just the rules one, we have three other ones as well, right? Just for staff purposes as well. So if that works for you folks, then the next,
let's meet on Thanksgiving,
I think we
That's a good
should,
idea.
yeah.
And,
as long as there's food.
Yeah, well-
We're not here having coffee.
No, the staff can provide a Thanksgiving dinner.
All right, moving on.
I actually have no plans for Thanksgiving right now. I always have plans for Thanksgiving and this way I wouldn't have to cook. So,
I always
Um,
go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. That's what I do on Thanksgiving.
Really?
Just me. I go there, sit there, have a steak.
wow.
I love
To
it.
North
It's one.
94th,
Arrow Squadron?
yeah.
Oh, nice.
They have a buffet.
Yeah,
It really is good.
So, all right, so availability, other than that, so at this point,
Mm,
okay, so the train,
do we want to look, well, after Thanksgiving?
right, do you,
We meet on the 4th for the CDP. Do you guys want to do the 5th?
I can't.
Okay.
and we also meet on the 11th. We meet on the
Yeah, we
4th
do.
and the 11th.
Or what,
I can do 12 or 19
I can do the 12th.
we're talking about December now?
December.
December.
Can we, if it's okay with you, folks, can we try the 19th? Only because I'd like to try to have the executive committee hopefully meet on the 12th. After all the first, okay, so the 19th, can we do the 19th,
Ah, I don't know.
At the same time, 4:30, can you do an hour and a half?
Doug?
Yes.
All right, so
Okay.
same place, same time.
Yep.
December
Same
19th.
bat time, same
Same bat
bat
channel.
channel.
Do they know what that means? They probably
I
don't.
think
know what
probably
that
don't know
means.
what
They
that
don't know
means.
what that
It's okay.
These young kids.
sentence structure. They're gonna look that.
You gotta look up diagramming
Diagram of
sentences.
sentences. They're
You're
gonna look
so
that up.
lucky, but yet you, yeah,
Yeah, so December 19th at 16:30, or I'm sorry, 4:30. That'll be it. When do you folks want this red line version of what we've done thus far? How much time do you need? How much would you prefer in advance before the next meeting?
When's feasible for you, Paul?
Probably, I'm not gonna begin to really do anything with it, only because of my schedule until the week of the 18th, so at least 10 more days from now, thereabouts of November. I'd
I
like
would
to
be
get-
okay if we get it a week before the meeting.
Okay, I'll have it to you long
By the
before
12th.
that.
Does that
Long-
work for
long-
you
I
guys?
will- Okay,
I did also want to ask, so I know you mentioned throughout that you communicated with Gloria as recommended amendments to the bylaws. Is it possible for us to get, I guess, a copy at least a few days in advance of?
Yeah, I just got an email from her
Okay.
today and it was one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I do
Mhm.
think that we should communicate to the commission. Another ask, we're all really busy. I don't know that
Yeah.
we're gonna get a lot of feedback, right? We're gonna be the ones thinking about this.
Mhm.
But I do think that maybe we could put the rules committee, just a quick thing on the next commission agenda.
I will ask for it.
Yeah, and just so that I can say, hey, we're working on the bylaws. If you're a bylaws kind of person, please take a few minutes to read through. And if you have suggestions for changes or questions, please submit them. So it was,
No,
I
no,
got,
no.
yeah,
I assumed it was probably like.
yeah, it was one sentence and it was today,
It was
so,
like last night.
Yeah, no, no.
Are we going to do what you talked about at the beginning of looking at other boards and commissions, to see if there's anything that we ought to?
I'd like to, I don't want us to waste too much time doing it. I'm thinking of, I don't know, I'm open to, suggestions. I just know that, like I said, when we started, we were just given this and we just worked off of this, so we didn't think elsewhere. I don't want to overcomplicate things if we feel like maybe we can revisit this as we get a little further through. Because, a lot of what we worked on today, it's in the code, right? And so, who knows? Maybe we'll bump up against some
Yeah,
of the things
we're
later on.
different than a lot of other commissions that we don't have.
That's the
You know,
issue.
We have a code that tells us,
Correct. But there's a lot of things later, I think, in the bylaws that are not for the code,
Right.
that are not directly from the code. But why don't we wait until we have a couple more heads in the room
Exactly,
and talk about this?
Exactly. yes.
Okay,
Because Dan, like other people might see where there are holes in bylaws.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
then.
that's
use
why
that
I
to
invited,
like-
for example, like Dan
Yeah.
and Alec, they're both attorneys.
Yeah,
They've worked on these kinds of things before,
Yeah.
so,
perfect.
okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Thank you.
We will.
Oh, did you park in the building? Do you
Yeah.
have?
Yeah.
You want to officially end the meeting? Like
Yes, I'm
say-
sorry, yes. We're gonna close this meeting at 6:03 PM. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
do we have any visitors today?
None.
I can't imagine why people would not want to.
I don't know. I mean, this is-
Coming
it's
to
Where
the-
the action
It
happens.
is. This is